It is Sunday, July 13th, 10:15 p.m. Eastern Standard. I'm going to take a quick look at the markets, kind of talk through what I'm looking at going into this week. We actually have a lot of interesting inflation news that will hit the markets this week as far as CPI, PPI, inflationary data. So markets could be potentially pretty volatile here. A couple things that we'll look out for. I want to talk through the current setups on futures. We'll talk through some of the stocks that we're looking at. We'll also we'll go into positioning as well, and then we may actually look at a couple of potential filters and reviews to see if we can find some interesting stock to look at and follow. Before we jump in here, I do want to highlight Bitcoin is actually getting close to about $120,000, which is interesting to watch. Ethereum is currently triggering a long momentum play for me as well as Bitcoin. And then other momentum plays that I have on currently are just the Russell trade. As far as positioning and things that we're looking at, we are looking at the following, and I'll actually show you on the sidebar here. We're still maintaining that short on the yen, which is actually well in profit. If we look up here, I believe we're in somewhere around the 7 cent mark. So we've actually had a pretty nice move lower, and it looks like that will continue lower. We're also looking at a short lean hogs, which we currently have not entered yet. Considered entering it on a pullback here the other day on Friday, but didn't end up taking an entry. As we can see, the moving averages have crossed once again. I may look to short this if we enter any amount of strength. I don't like the view I have on cycle analysis, some of the data I've looked at on the cattle and lean hogs market. It looks like this could trend up until about August, so I'm a little bit hesitant to pull a trigger on a short. Heating oil is currently set up as a short as well. Really hard to do anything there with the amount of volatility, so I would love if this thing could get back near the recent swing high before selling off, and then we can maybe get a trade on. Russell, like I said, will maintain here our current long position, which is in some profit. Sugar, I think, is getting interesting here. We are heading lower, and we're actually looking to break out of this current kind of channel, which looks like it may actually be happening. So I would like to also get long on this on a dip. I think sugar's been a little bit overdone on the sell side here. We've had this massive leg down, and I think we could start to see some upside pressure, and positioning is showing that that could be the case. Yen, we talked through. Ethereum, we've talked through with a momentum trade. And then I'm looking at cocoa and coffee, which I think could be interesting here from a positioning standpoint to go long. I'm not really sure when or how we're going to get in here. I would love to see cocoa actually sell off a bit further to get to closer to that kind of like 786 retracement, but it may find support here at the 618 and head higher. Not a trade I'll take unless we actually see a bit more of a lower rip and a potential reversal candle. And then coffee, that's also a tough one. It trades in such a wide range. I mean, yeah, 5 cent move is $18. This thing moves in dollars. It's just a very large contract to trade, and it's difficult to trade. And then the Swiss we're looking at for short. So those are kind of the current setups in the futures market. We're looking at a potential buyer of last resort trade on soybean meal and on the US dollar, which I don't currently have on the screen, but I've got some alerts set up. If those things do sell off, I will take a look at them and pull up the charts. And then, like we said, Ethereum momentum. I've actually entered. I don't do the futures for Ethereum. I actually trade the stock ETH. So I am in that in a small position. And then we've got a number of stocks to watch here for earnings this week, mostly financial institutions. We've got Citi, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and then we've got some mega cap companies like Netflix, and then financials like Ally Bank, Schwab. Really a lot of interesting financial earnings this week that'll be good to watch out for. And then like the AI play, we want to watch out for ASML earnings, which is on Wednesday in the morning. Really, the main thing to note here as far as stocks is if we look at MicroStrategy, we're actually trading up pretty well in the after hours here as Bitcoin continues to soar. That is an option play that we currently have on. I'm looking to probably trade this thing back up through the breakout and hold it. I have an August 15th expiration on the call options, so I may have to roll that and figure out where to push that out a little bit if Bitcoin kind of lags here and starts to consolidate. we may not really get much further move on MSTR MicroStrategy, so not a whole lot to highlight there. I did a previous video you guys can go back and watch on a couple of my top stock picks which are on this list, like Moderna, and then I think we had Walgreens on there as well. We covered MicroStrategy and a couple of others, so go check that video out if you didn't watch it already. But I want to do a quick look on FinViz and see if there's anything interesting and just kind of take you guys through what I normally do. So I like to look at some potential short squeeze opportunities, and I really don't like to touch any of the like really tiny companies. So I'll usually add market cap as a criteria here and just kind of get a look. Like HIMS is interesting. Like HIMS has actually had a pretty significant move up, but it's interesting to note that it currently has short interest over 30%. So people are shorting this thing and it could have a potential squeeze or at least squeeze potential, but just given the move on it right now, not something I'd probably trade. Icon Enterprises is an interesting one. Lucid, I think, is a dying company that really doesn't have much of a bull upside potential here. Rocket, I believe, just acquired Redfin, which is interesting to watch that they have a pretty high short interest. And then, yeah, not much else that I see of interest on here. Arbor Realty has actually been on there for a little while, which is, I think that's an interesting play, but the fact that it's been on there for a little while. Other thing I want to look at is any sort of recent, and let's see if I can find any sort of recent insider buying. So let's see if we can find that. Yeah, so if we go under signals, we can look at recent insider buying here, and then again, we'll do this based on market cap over 2 billion, or maybe even go over 10, just to shorten the list a little bit. Bank of America, it's already trading very high though. Most of these are on all-time highs. GME is interesting, but that's been kind of chopping sideways lately after a big gap down. Yeah, there's not really too much on this list. Oracle, trading really high. See some of the insiders selling. Palantir, which has really gone parabolic this past couple of years. Carvana. And then any upgrades? Okay, Thermo Fisher. I think biotechs are pretty overly beaten up. Unusual volume plays on anything over 2 billion. NEO. NEO's a tough one too, an EV play, especially with these EV federal cuts on the EV tax credits. I don't know how these other EV companies are going to survive. I really don't. Tesla's really the only one positioned to survive there outside of like maybe a Ford who has any sort of EV vehicles at scale. And, you know, that's not saying much. They don't have a whole lot of scale. Unusual volume. Let's see if there's anything else interesting here. Major news. Yeah, I do like head and shoulders patterns. Inverse head and shoulders can be interesting. That's not really, that's already at target. Yeah, there's not too much on these lists. Yeah, not seeing a whole lot, but recent insider buying. Like we talked about, yeah, not really anything interesting to me. Most volatile over 2 million or 2 billion. Yeah, I don't really recognize any of these names, but oh wow, look at and biotechnology. That's quite the move. But yeah, it's kind of what we're looking at. I've got my current positions on here for a various number of stock. I do want to cover the positioning briefly here as well. Look at Bitcoin positioning. We actually have a pretty good move on Bitcoin given the setup here. So it's really the commercials and small speculators that have been buying Bitcoin. And then Ethereum, it's kind of the same thing. So large money managers and hedge funds have not been really buying into this move. And then if we also look at equities, most of the move is on the most of the move going up, trending up would be Russell and the S&P 500. The commercials are buying that. That would be a side that I would want to be on. And then Nasdaq, it's mostly the large specs that are max long. So that's not a good sign for long-term play of the Nasdaq 100. I would think we probably don't want to be getting too levered on Nasdaq and too long on stocks or individual stocks in the Nasdaq. I think the Russell could catch up here, and I think the S&P could continue higher, just given the positioning. But just something worth highlighting and worth taking a look at here is the fact that Nasdaq is crowded long from the speculators, and Russell and S&P have not really seen much movement from the large specs. So just something to point out. Hope you guys find this interesting. We will do another video hopefully during the week, and I will likely start getting out the reports again soon since I haven't been doing those. Just they're a little bit time intensive, and yeah, I do those weekly. I cover futures mostly in those and a couple of stock picks, but there hasn't really been a whole lot, to be honest with you, with the futures markets. We've been on the short yen. We were long a couple of the stock indices, but there really hasn't been any trades that we've taken. We've taken a couple like long gold or a couple momentum trades. Copper was a really good one, but there just hasn't been a whole lot to cover on the futures market. There haven't been very many or good moves to take. So I've been more focused on the stock picks, which I don't really cover in those reports, but nonetheless, we'll get those out soon again. Appreciate you guys listening. We will talk again soon, and thanks a lot. Take care.